It's like we're live. Hope everybody's having a good Independence Day weekend. And if you're not able to join us and spend time with family and friends, we certainly understand. So, welcome to those that could make it, who's staying home and staying out of trouble. That's what I try to do. Saves me a lot of money not having to buy alcohol at the bar, and of course, bail money. It saves me a lot of that too. So, we was talking about that earlier this week. Yeah, stay out of trouble, man. It saves a lot of money. Staying at home, spending time with family. All right, y'all know the drill. Let me get these links out, and we can get to talking. I'm sorry I missed y'all with Hump Day. I wasn't feeling good. I tell you, I wasn't feeling real good last night. I was on the shit show, and I was tired, man. I hadn't been sleeping well all week, and I was falling asleep on the damn show last night. I was nodding off, and I just had to get out of there. I started to feel better, but I was just real tired where I hadn't been sleeping well the last few days. And it kind of catches up with you. But I got off the shit show, and I'm glad I did. There's a lot of drama happened right after that. So I'm glad I missed all that shit. I don't like getting involved in all that shit. And the person that was involved in it, I'm not real fond of him either. So I'm glad I was out of there for that. What's going on, Mikey? What's up, Bart? Hey, Billy. What's up, Curtis? Yeah, I heard that, brother. I heard it turned into the true shit show. That happens on there. It got its name from humble origins, I will say. Yeah, it did. I heard about it. I'm glad I missed it. I'm glad I was tired and I got out of there. I was there for maybe 15, 30 minutes, maybe, and maybe it's just a premonition I was sensing that told me to get the hell out of here. Maybe that's what it was. Hell, Dark, I wish I'd stuck around so I could have met you. Hell, we can do it next. Well, not next weekend. We'll be at Fibbles, but we'll get you on sometime. We'll see sometime. I don't add a lot of people on this. I'm trying to keep it from ending up being like the shit show. It seems I don't like interrupting people, but at the same time, when I have something to say, I like to get it all out. And sometimes people say I interrupt a little bit, so it's sometimes hard for me to have a lot of people on because you know I like to get what I need to say out when I want to say it. And a lot of times people try to stop you right in the middle of something, and I like to get it all out while it's still on my mind. Let me get to something while it's still on my mind, or else I'm old. I'll forget. I forget hell what was it I was what was I saying? And I'd hate that when I do that, man. And it's getting bad. I'm getting old and very forgetful, so it really pisses me off when I do that. And to avoid that happening, I generally try to just get it all out there, and say what I need to say. But I do try not to interrupt people, and I apologize if I do. But if I do, that's why. I'm just got something to say and I need to get it out. Then I'll hush and let people talk, say what they need to say. I think most of us are that way. I know I'm a lot worse now. I can't remember shit. I'm starting to get old and forgetful and forgetting half of what I learned, and it's frustrating. Those of us that are getting older, you understand. For you young folks out there, and it's what you got to look forward to. But let me get these links out. I can't see y'all talking right now, so I didn't split up my screen like I usually do. Let me do that. If I can do that real quick. What the hell? There, I can see comments now. What's going on, Brian? All right, Dark. I'll get. Hey, why? Look at here. Got on. I think it's back. There you go. Representing, brother. Hope y'all can see that. Brother Wayne. All right, Dark. We'll get to your question. Let me finish sharing these links and we'll get right on that. I'm glad y'all have some questions for me. So last weekend we talked about grain, so anybody have any follow-up questions about that too? Oh my God. How did that happen? How in the world that happened? All of a sudden my damn link changed. Tell me I still got that open. Okay, good. All of a sudden my link changed to a call it screenshot I made of a specific gun build. That was 30 minutes ago. I mean, I was sharing links. I stopped to talk to y'all and then quit, and then all of a sudden I hit paste, and that's what's pasting now instead of everything. We're back to the. I don't know how the hell that happened. Maybe you're opening up a separate window. That's probably what it was. It's weird how that happened. I've never had that happen before. Holy shit. It's in. That's real weird up there. It's strange. Okay. I opened up a different group that I hadn't even pasted the link to, and it had that ready to be sent. That's Facebook's been acting up, and this has been weird. I think they're trying to integrate AI, and it's not working. I think that's what's happening. And I'm pretty sure that's what's happening in some of my groups. AI is starting to initiate chats and this stupid shit. And it's like, man, can you all turn this off? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't think anybody turned it on. I think it was just on by default. You have to turn them off manually or something, maybe. I think that's where they're setting them up. Now they're going to, since I'm talking about them, they're going to make it, look here, create posts, just sit there. Man, oh man. So I think they're trying to let AI do a lot of work. And there was some posts that people have been posting, and it was waiting for approval. And usually the only time that happens is if they spam the group a lot, they get put on approval. But this person doesn't, and he wasn't on the approval list, and it was blocking, and it's done that for several people. Well, I'll be damned, they didn't let me get as many as they usually get out this time. Oh well, I'll try them again later, maybe. Didn't get it up to several groups. That sucks. Maybe we'll try to shoot that out later. Let me go ahead and paste it in here. I'll hit send on that later. Maybe they'll let me. After about 30 minutes. Yeah, come back and get to it a little bit later. So anyway, I don't even, did it even post to the Alicia page? Hit refresh. Okay, there. Well, everything taking a while. Let's see, Wes has his steel for sale. That looks like a pretty good deal for somebody. Nice copper rig. All right, let's get to Dark's question. Let me see. Let me put this back together. split screen thing. All right, here we go. Anyway, hey Wayne, what's going on, brother? All right, question on corn. Had a jar last night that changed flavor in the middle of drinking. Is that normal? A jar that changed flavor in the middle of drinking. I'd say the abnormal thing be the person drinking it. I think I think I think all of us are kind of that way, Dark. I think when I have my first drink, I like to drink something good because it seems like my taste buds are more able and not numbed, maybe I guess, and they're able to pick up more nuances and flavors and things of that nature. But after a couple few shots, I don't get those anymore. I just get alcohol and just want more of it. So that's that's generally why my first drink is usually something really good, a special bourbon or something like that, and then I follow up with some corn liquor or some good brandy or something. Well, what flavors, man? Did he? Don't take it backstage. I wonder if they went backstage. I hadn't heard the whole skinny on it. I got a chance to talk to Tom today, but he was busy, so we didn't get into too much detail. I had a few questions to ask him. I hope no, there'll not be none of that near. No, I don't. It's a shit show here, man. We just let it all hang loose. The shit show is what it is. It's what it's always been, and if we just get in there and get drunk, talk about whatever. I'm surprised it doesn't get more political than what it does. You know, having a bunch of opinionated drunk rednecks around, it usually you get you get talking politics pretty damn quickly. But we do pretty good staying off that, and off hate speech, and a lot of other things that are surprising. But all the other shows tend to try to gear them towards education or just kind of more fun. I know the ladies will talk about what ladies talk about. And I've watched a few of those, and and they're for the women it's a lot of fun, and for people who wasn't watching it's a lot of fun, and for agents it's a lot of fun, and I know Mark and Lisa get on Mondays and they do the herbal thing, and they pretty much try to stay on topic for that as much as Mark will allow. But I'm sure Lisa tries to keep him on track on that. But yeah, just education. I notice it's kind of catching on. A lot of some of the other groups and stuff are trying to angle more, or a lot of other podcasters and stuff are trying to angle on a little bit more towards education, and it's something that I've been wanting to do since the very beginning. And I felt a need for, and it's a lot of people are afraid to really come into the groups and ask questions for several reasons. Because a lot of the groups aren't very well managed and maintained, and every time they ask a question, everybody chimes in, well, that's the dumbest shit I've ever heard, or always, belittling them instead of thinking, well, it's the same questions I asked when I first started. Maybe I should help them like somebody helped me. That should be the attitude, but a lot of times in a lot of the groups, it's not, and they get browbeaten and made fun of because somebody has to, act like, they're the dial end all know of everything, and other people are afraid to ask questions because, they don't want their name out there, and they're worried about getting their name out there, and they don't want a lot of people knowing. It's like the old days of moonshine. It's really, people that made their own liquor that really talk about it much. It's just something they did. They didn't share, and I guess the smarter ones still don't. But it's changing now. A lot of states have changed their laws, and a lot of people are, a little bit more lax and understanding. I know, they got nationwide marijuana laws, and that doesn't seem to bother a lot of people. And now it's still illegal nationwide, but a lot of states permit it, which is strange to me. And I think distilling's kind of a lot like that as well. There's a lot of states that have legislated it legal now for certain limits, certain amounts and, age and whether you're legal or not and permissible. So I think it'd be kind of like marijuana. I think a lot more and more and more states are going to start allowing more of it. And, why not? You make beer and you can make wine, but you can't just, put it in a boiler and distill it. And a lot of them say, "Oh, it's about safety." It has nothing to do with safety. It never had anything to do with safety. It's all about taxes and alcohol and taxes on alcohol. Um, I'd say if you's out there making your own gasoline, they definitely want to restrict you from doing that too, because you'd be about getting around taxes. They can't stand that. But they don't care how you spend those taxes when you send them in. They'll spend that shit on anything, man. I see all that wasted money from USAID and all that money they sent overseas to help all kinds of stuff that doesn't even happen in that country. I don't know, how much. Well, I don't want to get on that topic. I don't want to get anybody upset. But yeah, I don't understand a lot of it. But they sure seem to waste a lot of our money. 90 pounds of corn, Jimmy Red, Ohio Blue, and Hickory White. What one you think is more dominant of the three? If I mix them together, probably be the Jimmy Red. It's the blue will give you some sweetness, and that white will give you some sweetness. But aside from sweetness, that I think the dominating will be the oily earthiness of the red, which a lot of people seem not to like. I kind of like it myself. I like the grassy sweet of wheat, and a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people don't like the spice of a rye. That's just according to what you like, and But I do know that when you do like a Jimmy Red, when you do successive runs and or with the Bloody Butcher. I think the Bloody Butcher may be even more oily than the Jimmy Red and more earthy. But I've noticed that. Let's see here. One way to find out. Okay, yeah, it's the Bloody Butcher. Yeah, swig of this 135 fire. Can't drink too much though. I get thrush every 10 times I drink this high proof. I have to kiss the old lady and get some bacteria built up in my mouth after I'm done. It's good excuse to give a little smooching. Need some bacteria, baby. Come on. Yeah. But yeah, that says you sour mash that Bloody Butcher or that Jimmy Red, you lose a lot of that. And Jimmy's not as bad as the Bloody Butcher, but after you sour mash it, you lose a lot of that. But I don't mind the oily, earthy. To me, it's just another note, flavor note. I like the sweet. I like a lot of different things. I'm not real picky. But I think that'll make a good combination, that red, white, and blue. I know Tom does a lot of that, Billy, and that's good stuff. I've tried different people's red, white, and blue, and it's a really good combination, and definitely one that I'm going to do and make it a regular thing. I'm going to get me a bunch of Ohio Blue. I really like that. Oh no, what's going on, Trey? Well, it's yeah, definitely, Scott, and prayers for all the people down in Texas, all our brothers and sisters and families and friends down there, man. It's bad, it's crazy flooding. I don't know, Eastern Kentucky, where I grew up, it's flooded at least twice, maybe 2 or 3 times in the last year and a half, and tornadoes and stuff, and that's just, I mean, floods were common there. Every 20 years to have a flood wasn't unheard of. We had them in the 70s and the 90s and 80s. But yeah, man, it seems like lot of bad weather in a lot of places, storms. I mean, we've always had hurricanes blowing up Florida, through the central eastern U.S. and dousing it with rain, but never so much, and washing out hollows, man. It's just left and right. North Carolina, Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, West Virginia. I mean, just last week, there's Eastern Kentucky and West Virginia got hammered. I saw a picture of this apartment building. Somebody said it's a dormitory. It might be a dormitory, but it just had water blowing out the windows over the roof and everything. It was horrible. So it's great for everybody down here in Tennessee. All right, Doc. Yeah, we got to see if it still tastes that way. Went from a natural to a sweet caramel taste. Well, I think women look sweeter the more you drink. I think the liquor might get a little sweeter as you drink it too. Yeah, I appreciate you, gang. We're not about followers, brother. I appreciate that. I want as many people to follow as wants to watch and enjoy it. We're not earning any money. I've never earned the first penny. I'm not out to go viral or get thousands of viewers and all that stuff. I mean, some people that's what they're into. I'm just here having a good time helping my brothers make better liquor. Be safe about it. I think we get one of those on about every time. Anyway, it's nice that they do that and offer that for. I know that there's a lot of I do game streaming on Kick, and I see a lot of people streaming on there and wanting to up their viewership, but ain't nothing like a real viewer. You see these streamers, they got 1,500 people watching. It's like only 3 people talking in chat, so that they paid somebody for some of those viewers. Every time they come on, they all of a sudden jump right up to 1,500. Yeah, it's kind of funny how that works out. What's going on, Mark? What's up, brother? Yeah, times are changing, man. Back in the old days, we didn't talk about making liquor. We didn't talk about growing weed, and we didn't dare talk about that stuff. But now, hell, everybody just put their pictures out there live of doing it, the weed they grow, and it's still not legal in their states. So I don't know. Be careful about that. We've had a few people get in trouble, but certain states, I will say, North Carolina, walk a tight line. They do care. There's some states that kind of we got better shit to do than mess with an old man trying to make himself a little liquor or something like that. But some states they give a shit, man. They hear about it. They pay you a visit, and it it's I don't know. To me, I think everybody should be able to do it. Um, if they make you take a class on safety or something like that, that might be understandable. I mean, you have to pretty much do the same thing to cook food or, pretty much do anything else. But, in your own home, as long as you're being safe, I don't see why it's anybody's business. It's, like I said, making wine, making beer's fine, but the second you concentrate that alcohol into something, it's all of a sudden heavily illegal. So I don't know. But that's, yeah, like I said, once it's cut of it. But you only have to pay tax if you're selling it, right? So if you're just making something, small quantity for yourself and your buddies when they come over and hang out, I mean, there's no tax involved. I mean, you're avoiding paying a tax, I guess, by not buying, store-bought liquor. But yeah. All right, let me get caught up here. So I went from sweet to caramel. One on, Horace. Of course. Pyramid of Ice. Huh? We got some comedians. I appreciate you, man. Dr. Shipman. Huh? Well, hello to Dr. Shipman. What's going on, Mr. Beck? From Florida. Let's choose Florida. I used to live down there. A place called Fort Pierce, Florida. You ever heard of Fort Pierce? What's going on, Steve? Yeah, Joey. It's not an average amount. You know, we try to standardize it. A lot of people say, 50 milliliters out of every gallon or something like that. But you really want to learn to just judge taste and smells. And different distillates will have different amounts of heads. 4 shots, pretty much, just very little bit at the first, and then very carry out throughout the run. But the heads, it like in a lot of brandies, you'll have a lot more heads than you would like in a sugar shine, you know. So which don't have hardly any. So it you just kind of have to go by smell and taste. It's that acetone flavor and that smell. You'll know it when you smell it, Joey. Um, and I will say, you do 5 gallons at a time. It's harder. I got my allergies again, and if I don't have a fear of them damn nose, that kills me. But 5 gallons at a time, it's really tough, and the less you do, the harder it is to make cuts. So I do, understand where you're at. I did the same, and it gets pretty tough. It's because there's not a lot of alcohol to begin with. You start out 5 gallons, at 10%, and you end up with maybe a quart of liquor, if you're lucky. So maybe a couple, So it just doesn't it's tough to get a lot. So that's cool. So yeah, it's pretty tough when you do 5 gallons because you tend to try to keep more because you're putting a lot of time and work into it, and you tend to keep more because you want more alcohol, But it really, I can't recommend enough going to a 15-gallon keg or 10 or 15, 18-gallon still. I mean, that Beverly football we talk about a lot, 18 and a half, for a couple $100, all, good deals. Uh, but if that's what you got, that's what you got to work with, and you just got to work around it. But smelling that acetone, what you need to do, Joey, is start with smaller jars until you'll learn, basically different distillates as you run them. You'll learn about how much how much in a jar to keep and pitch, uh, or pull to the side and pitch, um, or use it for a lot of things. Don't pitch it, save it. It's good for a lot of things. But like start out with small jars, especially at the very beginning where we know there's heads and fours. When hearts to tails, it's less critical, because the tail flavors not as bad as the ace, right? We all most agree on that. Um, so just do smaller jars at first, real small jars, and line them up and label. I just get some painter's tape and I'll just tear it and I'll label them 1 to 10 and just stick it to the cabinet. And as I do each jar, I'll just pull that off and put it on the jar lid, on the cap. And as I go, I'll just set them in order and order, and label them. And then let's just say you get 10 jars, half pint, whatever jars. The smaller the steel, the smaller the jar needs to be because the cuts, will be finer. Um, so what you want to do is so you got 10 jars out there, right? Go to jar 7, okay, and number 7. Taste it, see what that tastes like. Go to jar 8, see what that tastes like. Okay, we're getting a little bit into the tails, and I'll put a diagram up here to show you. This isn't something that you're going to want to follow exactly. You know, it just gives you a basic idea of damn it, I can't believe it's not right there. Let me see. How did that get there? Let's see. How's it on my there? This is the biggest problem I have. I've got so many files, and that should have been there. Damn it, man. Wow. Just a minute, brother. We'll get you. How in the hell? Okay, here we go. Here we go. Damn. So imagine this is your 10 jars, but there's 20. So, 20 jars, let's just say. So I'm saying come to 7 instead of 7. Now it's 14. So try to taste, this jar 7 or 14 if you have 20 jars out there, and kind of taste it because as I was earlier talking about my taste buds. Once my first drink, I want it to be something really good because once I get a few in me, taste isn't is critical, and I don't taste much. I think most people are the same way. Once you get a few in you, man, you can be drinking, Bunn's Farm. You don't give a shit. It doesn't matter once you get a little bit in you. You can just drink about anything. So between jar 7 and 8, you can try those and see your 14, 15, and see those and how it tastes. It's okay. Okay, go to the next one. No, I don't know. It's I can taste something else there, but it's not bad. Okay, now you get to 17. All right, I still think y'all can see my little mouse, but my little mouse cursor. But so by the time you get to jar 17, wait a minute, I'm definitely picking up some odd flavors here. So 17 through 20, we just call that tails, and a lot of people won't even do a 16, but between 14, 15 ish, they're like, that flavor gets lost when you start mixing it with 8 through 14, right? Yeah, yeah. I've got all these should be on the militia and in the DIY group files. So if it's not, let me know and I'll add it. But let me get this out of here too, so y'all can see it. So anyway, right here, so you start to tell it, and then you just save those. All right, save those because you can see there's good alcohol in there, and the flavor is kind of musty, and it's not that great, but it's not like acetone, right? So it's something that we can get this out of there without ruining a batch. I wouldn't dare put anything in jar 2, 3, or 4 in anything I wanted to redistill. People say, "Oh, it's just a strip and run." I don't care if it's a strip and run, a main run, exactly what your purposes are. But jar 2, 3, and 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 here will never go back into another run. That will never get dumped back into a still of mine. And maybe even 5. Because there's just not enough alcohol in those to go to the trouble of trying to get rid of that dark blue. So I'm just not going to do it. I'm just I mean, I'll save it to kill grass or to, wipe down metal before I weld it, or, clean copper before I solder it or something like that. It's great for all those purposes. Clean a PVC before you, put the glue on and all that. It's great for all that stuff. It works real good as a solvent, cleaner, countertop cleaner. It's good. I use it. I keep a little thing handy. I take my little yeah, I'll say that in a minute. I'll get my light off. Oh, there you go. Yep. Well, here it is. You can't hardly see the label on it, but I've got a little contact cleaner solution thing here, and you can see that the writing's about. You can see it had some writing on it, but I just put and I use this to spray on a little Kleenex or something, and I use it to clean my glasses with. It makes good glass cleaner. You can put some blue food coloring in it, so you don't accidentally drink it, or make sure you label the jar that it's in, whatever. Anyway, get back to your. I throw all that away. 1 through 4, 5 out. But we're going back to the tails. Okay, we taste it. Once we know where we're at in the tails, then we go back to jars, and we can go to jar 4 or 8, right? And we're going to try jar number 4 or number 8 in this one, and we're going to see how much of that acetone we're picking up in it, right? So notice we're doing this last, because once you get that acetone taste in your mouth, it's hard to get it out, So you definitely want to go from jar 8, 9 backwards, because once you hit jar 5 and you taste all that freaking acetone, man, it's going to be a while before you can drink anything and it not taste like that. And most people take a little sip of water and cleanse their palate. Not with that shit, you ain't. I mean, it's horrible. So, but I hope this answers your question. It's not a given set. You really kind of want to taste, from jar number 8 back, and tell, when it's becomes unacceptable, and it's something that you can't just blend in. And if you take it and your buddy say, man, this is tasting pretty headsy, you might want to tighten up your cups. Then start at jar 9, and start cutting back, because your taste may not be the same as others. But just a general chart. But they found out now we used to think that 4 shots only came off at the very beginning here, like in jar 1, and they were gone, right? Well, we found that that's not the case. So technically, that red in jar 1 should have a tiny bit in jar 2, jar 3, jar 4. And by jar 5 and 6, it should be a lot of little red dots. And by the time you get to 20, it may be one little red dot, right? Because there's trace those amounts all the way throughout the run. But it's not going to be in the concentrations that's going to cause you to go blind or any of this other crazy shit that they've told you in the past. And they found that technically you would have to try to concentrate 4 shots to get them to the point where they're going to be blinding you, right? And making liquor that'll blind you. I think a lot of that was like the reefer madness of the 30s, put out there to scare people, to scare a lot of hillbillies and stuff about, drinking that liquor, you go blind and all that, and trying to scare them away from. I'm sure a lot of pastors, talked about that in the churches. Go out there, you're going to go blind drinking that, Billy, you know. So trying to, shame and scare people from it. But really, other than bad hangovers, that's probably going to be the worst side effect you're going to face from not making good cuts. But I'm not going to lie, there have been cases, and I read one that happened in India a few years back, where they had a bunch of people, in the town that died and went blind, and some went blind, some died from concentrated methanol, right? They had to have found a way to basically rerun that jar 1 and kept rerunning that and rerunning it to the point maybe they saved 4 shots. Maybe that's what they were doing. They were saving jar 1 and 2, and just kept saving those and rerunning them, and it just kept concentrating and concentrating until finally they got to a certain level, and they decided, here, let's just sell this jar to some, kind of like some drug dealers that are selling fentanyl. They don't really care about the people that buy it. So let's just go ahead and get this jar, sell it to some dumbass for half price, and instead of pouring it out or using it to kill some grass and get some good use out of it, they sold it to some people and people died. So, but yeah, you would really almost have to intentionally try to concentrate those 4 shots, and that's one of the reasons you don't see a lot of people saving a lot of 4s and rerunning them. For that reason, you don't want to try to fool with that. And some people do in their stripping runs. They'll save those heads and mix it with all that good liquor and rerun it, and then I guess try to make that cut again. My thoughts are, if you got them out of the solution, why reintroduce them? Because they're not more heads. New heads don't get created after that run, so you might be able to take more out on that second run, which I do. So every time I run some, I'll use my little smell and taste test, and I'm always going to remove, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 every time I run. So until I get to where I taste and smell and it's not bad, it gets dumped. And that's how you can get much higher quality, better liquor, is by running it several times and removing it every time. And you get rid of all that, and you'll have a good, smooth liquor that's not going to give you a mean hangover, and people will like the product. You'll have high quality, but you do have, that higher cost. So yeah, I mean, yeah, most of us make it for ourselves. There's a few that sell it and unwisely talk about selling it, but we don't condone that. We don't talk about it. For us, it's all about the hobby. It's all about home for ourselves and buddies that come over and drink with us. That's the purpose. We're not this isn't anything about selling. We definitely don't recommend it. We do, however, have a lot of people that did this and moved up into the legal fields. There's been some people that I've helped, and a lot of others have helped and educate them, and now they're working in distilleries. Man, I think that's awesome. That's great to see them moving up. So that's another thing about learning at home is it may be something that you want to do as an occupation. So you're kind of learning at home how to do a job and get some credibility and abilities that'll allow you to go out and find a job in that field. So that's awesome. What's going on, Morgan? I know what you mean, Steve. Yeah, brother. I know exactly what you're saying. It's not that bad at the festivals, though. You'd be surprised. Those ones that talk the most shit and they don't show. Like Miller, he ain't gonna show up at none of these festivals. He's not. And then even if he did, half the people that oh, they're going to kill him and do all this, they sit there and they may not say hi to him or something like that, but they're civil. Nobody gets in any. Of all the festivals I've been to, I've never seen any fights or I've seen some heated words spoke back and forth, and some rightfully so. And been in some uncomfortable situations where people got so drunk they said inappropriate things. But at the end of the day, we're all brothers, and we gotta try to keep the peace. And so most of them, they don't really, they don't quite their bark a little worse than their bite, maybe I could say. But they don't. They have a lot of issues. I'm just glad I got off before all that started because I don't like all that drama. I don't like it at all. But I hope this chart helps you, Joey. If you can make a screenshot of it, you're welcome to, brother. And just remember, this is just a general rule. You know, a lot of them will say this is 30%, this is 40%, this is 30%. And, you know, maybe this is so many milliliters out of a gallon or whatever. But just always remember that first little bit that comes off, just pitch it. You know, pitch it to a jar. I have a little jar of marked heads, and I use it again for cleaning and doing a lot of things. And just mix your fours and your heads together, keep them in a different container, little skull and crossbones on it or something like that, so you know what it is. And you can use it for a lot of different things. You know, it comes in handy for a lot of things. You know, get ice off your windows. I mean, there's a lot of good things you can do with it. Yeah, me either, brother. Yeah, he definitely done some shady shit and taking some money. You know, I personally, you know, somebody takes something that, you know, whatever, you know, you go to the risk, you know, you're robbing from Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever, Walmart. You know, I don't like it. I don't condone it, but you know, that's one thing. But when you're running a charity and you're collecting money for the needy and people that are needy and are, you know, and they've lost their homes or families or whatever, you know, and you rob them, that's a whole new level of hell, you know. That's a whole different thing. Well, I mean, those could be pints, you know, half pints. So it 20 jars could be 20 half pints. You know, it's kind of just basically just an illustration. It would be probably better if it had half that many jars, but they've passed this around for a long time. And another thing I don't really care for is the temperatures that's up here. Throw that shit out the door because that's bullshit. At 185 degrees, let me find the chart that is right. Okay. At 185 degrees, which would be right here, for anything to be happening coming out of your still, you would have to be 30% ABV. Now, this is percent. This isn't proof. So that's 60 proof right there. Now, I don't know about you, but I've never had a mash come in at 60 proof, you know. It'd be, you know, I guess if it's a run where you dump a lot of tails in it, you know, I could see it getting up there. So yeah, most of your stuff's gonna have around 90, you know, 190 to 195. You know, your 10%, which is 28, you know, ABV, 20 proof. So 10%, be about 196, 197. And that's where most people start seeing some action on their steels. This is 190s. You know, you get up to 18 ABV. Your yeast isn't really working much beyond this. You know, your EC 1118 will get you up to about 18% here. Anything beyond that, it ain't working. So at the least we're looking at 190, right? So throw these temperatures out. Don't even look at that. Unless they're talking about vapor temps, maybe, but it's definitely not the pot temperature. And this is all about, this is pot temp. This is the temperature of the liquid in your boiler. And a lot of people, at 185, they'll look down in their boiler and they'll say, well, I can see some stuff coming up. That's just boiling on the bottom. Now remember, the boiling on the bottom of the pot is going to be hotter, right? So that bottom of the pot is probably 195 degrees. and you've got your thermometer in there in the top, and it says 180. So you're going to have a good bit of difference right next to the bottom of that pot that's right next to that gas heat or that electric element or the element on the stove, whatever, gas stove, gas. It that bottom is going to be a lot hotter, right, than the midway or at the top of the liquid inside of the pot. So also keep that in consideration because it may, at the bottom be 195 and actually boiling some alcohol down there before the top is really, doing much. So, but yeah, it generally speaking, 190 to 193 is you're going to start, 195 range. You're going to start seeing stuff happen here if you got a 10, 12% to 18% ABV, which is pretty high, really. So, right in that range is where you're going to see a lot of things happening, and just throw these numbers out. This is silly talk. This is silly. I will say though, once you get into the higher tails, the concentrations of liquor and see this is temperature here and this is proof. So as you have higher percentage of alcohol, like pure 100%, it's 173.1. We know that, right? And a lot of people think that because you've got a mash that's got alcohol in it, that 173.1 is going to start cooking off. That's not the case at all. It does not cook off at that temperature at all. Nothing will come off unless at 173.1, unless you have 100% alcohol or 90% alcohol, 185 proof plus, right? So nothing's going to come off at all. This is the boiling point. This is when you start seeing, steam and vapors coming off, right? Now, once it gets up here, you're getting mostly water, right? And the reason it does this is it's azeotropic, and basically what an azeotrope is you mix several different compounds together and change the boiling point of all the compounds, right? So it will all, it's going to change, as you get more water. Of course, the higher the boiling point is going to be, the more alcohol, the lower the boiling point is going to be. But you're not going to get that fractional distillation like a lot of people think because it's being an azeotrope. So once you get to this point, it doesn't cross this line here because once you get to around 210, all you get coming off that still straight on up until you run out of water will be like 4% alcohol and the rest will be water. And it'll do that until you run out of water and alcohol, and it'll both will come out at the same time. That very last drop will be the same proof as started. So the boiling points will change. It will take more to get your still to put off more as you get more water and less alcohol. But there is, for example, here at 190, mid 90s, when you've got it going and you're getting some alcohol and you've got some coming off, right? You're in this range right here, between 195 and 200, and you're getting some drip action. You're getting water included in that, right? So there's actually water boiling, but it's not at 210 degrees. It's not 200 plus degrees. It's a boiling point of water. So why are we getting all this extra? Why are we getting all this extra? Water when we're not at the boiling point of water is because the actual boiling point of water lowers and the boiling point of the alcohol is increased, right? So that's what happens when you mix alcohols and esters and propanols and all the different types of alcohol that's in the mash with water. That's what happens. Yeah, Shane, it'll vary, depending if you're doing like a brandy, you're going to be throwing off a little more versus like a sugar shine, where you'll have quite a bit less. So it'll vary, but as a general rule, I mean, once you figure out about when you've got certain, distillates like a brandy, for example, pretty much most of your peaches and apple brandies are going to carry about the same amount of heads. Grapes and plums. Plums, they tend to be a little more heady than some of the other fruits that I do. So you'll see, it's best just to go by smell and taste. But as a general rule, pretty much how much it's going to be with just experience. Um, but the taste test, nothing beats, tasting it and breaking, which jar that you're at and knowing that you're going to keep anything beyond before that. Well, those thermometers that come with those aren't the best quality. But a lot of times it depends on where it's located. If it's on the top of the pot, um, it's getting a lot of temperature from the actual metal itself. So um, that metal being on the stove or on that gas burner is going to be a little bit hotter maybe than the metal that's or the liquid that's in it. So and vapor temperature is going to be less, so your vapor temperature at the top of your column is going to be definitely less than the boiling point because it's cooling off as it goes up. That's what causes that reflux, is it cooling off as it goes up through that column. So we're in that whiskey helmet. So it's going to be a little cooler. Your vapor temperature is going to be a little cooler than your boiler temp. Yeah, run it. And keep your thumper close. The closer you can keep your thumper to your lin arm or your column, wherever you're coming off, the closer that you can get that, the less temp you lose between that column and your thumper. So if you can, minimize that distance. I've seen a lot of people insulate their pipes to help, keep the temperature up. You don't want to lose a lot of temperature until, of course, you come out of that thumper or out of that last infuser or whatever, and then you're starting to head towards condenser. Then you want it to be cooler. So I'm not following you, brother. 200, no chart. Yeah, 200 at about 8%. So if your gravity's like 1060 and then you 106070 and you run it all out, yeah, it's going to be right about 200. If you got 8%, 8 or 9%, which isn't, 10%, I think. I'm trying to think about what gravity that would be. Probably close to 1080, 1090 ish, 1080 maybe. Let me look it up real quick. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. You probably sit on your hydrometer too. Might be 11 actually. 1080 might be 10.75. It's close to 11. Yeah, 10 to 11. So 1080 is 10 to 11. So um, right here, 1080 is going to be pretty close to about 196. That's about where that's about where I start seeing shit at, 196 on mine. So yeah, you're going to be right. 1080 is going to be about 11 if everything, you know, if you finish it dry. So that's about right. This chart's really good. So definitely forget this temp shit at the top. In a controlled laboratory where you can do fractional distillation or vacuum distillation or something, you can change these numbers a little bit. But in a pot still, we'll get to it. Absolutely, brother. That I mean, yeah, it'll the heads will smell acetone. So if you've ever smelled fingernail polish remover or acetone, you can buy it at the hardware store. You can just go open up and smell it. But it smells a lot. A lot of the fingernail polish, I will say, has been perfumed. So a lot of people kind of when they smell acetone, they're like, "Well, this doesn't smell like my old lady's, fingernail, remover." Because a lot of times they put some perfumes in there to try to make it smell a little better. But you'll definitely know it when you smell the acetone, and it's very very bitter. It's not good, not good at all. But again, when you're drinking, when you were talking about these jars here, no, because you definitely going to taste it in jar 1 through 3 or 4, and shouldn't to 5 unless there's something wrong with your taste buds. Which after you've had about 10 drinks of somewhere in the hearts, and you start going back to these heads, and jar 5 might not taste as bad to you. You might feel bad the next day, but that's just hangover material, really. And people won't like the flavor of your stuff. But we're getting beyond the part where it's going to kill you or harm you, any more than alcohol is going to harm you. But it'll definitely increase that hangover factor considerably. So yeah, you'll be able to smell. You'll know it and taste it. But again, start at 7 or 14 on this, and figure out where your tails are first, and start saving those in a separate bucket. Or for subsequent runs, you can put those tails back in there. Don't put it in your next mash. Save it until you're getting ready to run again, and then dump it in the pot, right? So you don't want to put that in your mash and kill your yeast off or raise the alcohol content of your mash. But just put that in your still next time you run, or your thumper. That's what we did back in the days. We'd always just say that, put it in the thumper every time, right? And try to get some good alcohol out of it. Oh yeah, that's awesome, bro. My family didn't. They didn't. Well, my grandparents, didn't do anything like that. My grandmother made some wines and things like that, but I do have some ancestors that did shine. But that's awesome. Toss it. No, say that. You can. There's a lot of good uses for it. Like I say, it's great for cleaning. Glasswork. It's good for cleaning out your microwave. It's great for cleaning metal before you weld it or solder it. It's great for killing grass, um, cleaning glass. I mean, we could probably do a class on the uses of heads. We could sat around and acted crazy and talked about all of the things we could do with it. It's kind of entertaining, but yeah, save it for cleaner. Oh yeah, for lighting charcoal, or I guess it'll work in your Zippos. Yeah, you don't want to get greedy. You get rid of those fours in that jar of one, and maybe a little bit of two on that chart. Those are probably like half pints, we say. Unless that's 100-gallon steel or something, and you're putting out quite a bit. Or a 50-gallon, and you're putting out quite a bit. Yeah, so it'll just get I agree. It'll just get you in trouble. I mean, if you're going to violate a federal law selling something, there's a hell of a lot of stuff that you can make more money on than liquor. It takes a lot. It's not worth a lot of money. It takes up a lot of room in the trunk. You know, are you going to have a whole trunk of liquor or one little bag of weed? You know, to make that couple few $100. You know, it's just, yes, sir. Thank you for your service, brother. And exactly, you fought for your freedoms. Why the hell should you have the freedom to make your own drink? I mean, it's, you know. What's going on, Chaz? Welcome to the show, brother. Yeah, smaller jars for smaller steels. You know, like a 5 or 10 gallon. You know, you have to have smaller jars. You know, to help break them up. You know, because you don't want to. You know, you don't want to mix jar 5 and 6 and 7 together. You know, if you had too big of a jar, you know, because you'd be wasting that. 7's not a bad drink. You know, that's really, you can start taste just a touch. And but once you mix that jar 7 with, you know, all the jars through 16, let's say, you know, it's going to pretty much balance out. You're not going to get that flavor. You know, I know a lot of people that drink nothing but jar 10, 11, and 12, and they won't drink nothing else. And you know, that's awesome. But I hope they're not throwing away the rest of that, which a lot of times they do. It's like, I hope you enjoy the hobby because it's definitely not paying. You know, you know, you can go out and buy some top shelf stuff if all you're getting is jar 10, 11, and 12 out of all the effort and time and money you're putting into it. You probably be just as well off just going out and buying you a quart of Tito's and forget about it, you know. Yeah, I do the, if you have enough 4 ounce or 8 ounce jars, that'd be awesome, you know, to do it. Especially do your 4 ounce jars. Don't bother with 1, 2, and 3, you know, and 4. You know, those are something that's going to be gone anyway. And you can smell it as it's coming off the drip there. You know, let some drip on your fingers and just kind of rub it on your fingers and smell it. You know, rub it to get it spread out on your fingers, and then it'll start evaporating, and you'll get an odor coming off of it once it evaporates well. And just smell it, you know, and keep your fingers clean, and just do that every once in a while, you know. But once you get to jar 5 and 6, you're going to know it, and then you can slide in these 4 ounce jars when you get around jar 5 and 6, see, and start saving up those. And when you get to, you know, you'll know when you're in your hearts, so let's just say, and then you can start maybe using some larger jars there, and then maybe around 14, 15, start using small jars again. And that way you can make your fine cuts, and you can always pour those small jars back into the bigger jars in the middle, right? And mix it up. You know, I know a lot of shiners back in the day. They would toss 1 through 3 and 4 through 18, got all mixed together, and they wouldn't even run, you know, 19 or 20 out. So, and they just blend it all together in one big pot, mix it up, pour it in the jars, and sell it. You know, and it was okay tasting, and it was generally pretty inexpensive, and it gave you a pretty decent little hangover, you know. But it wasn't expensive, and it was okay, and that's all you can say about it. It was just okay, and that was money, you know. That was when you're doing it to make money, you know. That's what you got to do, you know, to make that money, you know, and that's where most of your profit is. So in getting that product out and having that suitable acceptance. They don't have to love it. They just have to, okay, you know, at this price, I'll tolerate that quality, and you kind of meet that, and you know, because you're never going to get the real high end drinkers, you know, the ones that like bourbon, you know, aficionados and people like that. You're never going to get them to love your white dog. I don't care how good you do it. because they got to have that smoky, aged. It's totally different. Once you start aging it, you can take that same white dog that they hated, put it in a barrel for a few months if it's a small barrel, or a big barrel a few years, and it'll turn into something that they'll swear up down some of the best shit they ever had. And you say, well, that's the same shit you hated, 3 years ago. And it's like, well, it undergoes a transformation. There's esterification that goes on. There's a lot of oils in it that convert to, flavorful esters. A lot of these um, oils and acids in there esterify into some really good flavors. When you mix those oils and acids together, they 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 change, and it over time. So even if you're aging in jars, it doesn't have to be in wood. You can be aging in a jar with no wood. I'm talking about just time passing inside a jar, and you'll get some, definitely get some flavor changes. And having Alan Bishop on Wednesday, this next Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. I won't be on this next Saturday. We're going to be at Fewbilly's having a party, but this next Wednesday we'll have Alan Bishop on. We're gonna probably talk about, and I'll make a note of that. We'll talk about a little bit more about esterification, oils, and acids. These are all just, acid. It's not like sulfuric acid or anything like that. It's these are organic acids, that are part of the distillation process. But based on the chart, 7 to 14, yeah. Actually, you could go 7 to 16. The tails aren't as offensive as the heads. So, when you start getting a little bit of that wet cardboard flavor, you're going to be 15, 16, and a little bit of must and, musty flavor. But once you mix that with, 8 through 14, you don't taste that anymore. So individually, that percentage in that jar tastes a certain way, but once it's blended with all the others, it loses that. So I tend to go from like an 8, maybe even a 7 to, a 16. Unless, of course, I'm in some kind of competition or something like that. And then it's, jar 10, 11, 12, one of those. Yeah, it is. Adding that smoke to it, man, it makes it so much better putting it in that barrel, because really that's 60 to 80% of the flavor. It comes from aging it in that barrel. So, the 40%, up to 40%, 20 to 40 that you can add to that, that's all you're putting into that, because the rest of it is going to be all aging and all barrel that adds that additional flavor to it. So, to make it unique and good, you've got to really put all the effort you can in that 20 or 40%, because the rest of it's just barrel. That's good. You're getting about 6 pints. That's three quarts. That's good. Yeah, I figure, two, and a little over two, getting into three, with just your hearts here. So that's about right. It just depends on where you start, how much alcohol you're starting with. You get a nice setup, brother. Which one? I saw several. Yeah, I've seen the keg setup. Keg stills are awesome, man. Yeah, it's definitely a good start. Yeah, I don't even the temperatures. The only thing I really keep track of the temperature on is the coolant going into the condenser. I try to keep it pretty constant. So that's really the only temperature gauge that I look at all is the actual temperature of the water circulating around either the worm or the temperature going into my shotgun condenser. What's going on, Joseph? What's up, brother? Chaz, we were talking about that earlier. Personally, I think it's a waste of time and trouble. Especially if you're talking about anything jar 5 or less. So anything from jar 1 to jar 5, that's just that little light blue that you're wanting to get out of it. And, I'm not going to deal with all that dark blue just to try to get that little bit of light blue out of it, right? And when you add that back into it, it kind of defeats the purpose of distillation. We're distilling it to get a lot of this bad stuff off, right? And we're to separate the alcohol from the water, A, but two, to also get rid of some of these bad things. And we'll talk to Alan about that on Wednesday as well, on stripping runs and redistilling head. Because even him as a commercial, I doubt very seriously he does that either. I just don't see the benefit. I don't care how much money you're trying to make. I guess if you had a 10,000-gallon vat and that little bit of blue in the 6 and 7, or the 5 and 4 represented, maybe 100, gallons of alcohol or something. Maybe you could try to separate it again. Um, but most of them, and that once they get that big, they got fractional columns that they can separate all these jars out instantaneously on a column that's a fractional distilling column. It's got like outputs for different at different heights on the column, and it's continuously being fed, and it's a fractional distillation system, and it's set up to fractionally separate these off. So it's got little pipes that lead off to different places, and they can do that with that type of technology. But that's not a pot still. We use pot stills here, so unless you got $500,000 set up, yeah. But again, I just don't see the benefit in putting those back in the pot and running it again. Some people do, but why? Once you get it out, don't put it back in there, and it's not something you have to remove again. That way, the next time you run it, you'll have fewer heads. And if you do a triple distillation, like I do a lot, you can pull those out each time and eliminate all those and try to recoup, um, from down in the tails. If you want to try to recoup some, do it down in the tails. That's the easiest place to recoup it without getting, because even the flavor is just musty. It's easy to get to distill that out, and than it is to get rid of that acetone. That tends to acetone's azeotropic too, so it's going to try to bond with a lot of that water and alcohol all the way. And it's just, I don't understand why. I don't, other than financially, I guess they have money in it, but I don't think many of them are going to do that. But some will, always. I just don't, I'm sure you can remove it each time though, just the same, but it's just adding it back in there. Yeah, yeah, just Yeah, just keep collecting them in small jars, and once you get experience, you won't have to do but you'll always do the jar thing. You'll always have the jars cut off, and you should always number them, have that little tape ready, and just label the tops. That way, when you start, doing your, blending, um, and proofing, you'll know what to keep. A lot of people, down here in jar 20, once you get down to here, you get to jar, past 20, you start getting into some sweet water, which is, pretty good sometimes for proofing. So yeah, backset, pretty acidic. And if you ever have a place where you dump it, you'll notice that a lot of shit ceases to grow there. But it's very acidic, which is one of the reasons people put in the sour mash. Now, why in the hell would I want to shave this epic beard off, man? What will not happen? But thanks for compliment. I am zesty. Yeah, it makes good cleaner. What's going on, Jeffrey? What, your head's going citronella? That's interesting. That's not something that I've talked about or considered. And also, I guess you could put a little perfume in it and give it to your lady for fingernails. You know, I've got Jesus, brother. I know. I don't know what I'm talking about. You like heads. Yeah, heads is the clearest and highest proof. Yeah, first stuff that comes off always is. In jar one, yeah, once you got there using your tails. Yep, that's a fact, Scott. The only thing that you really can do to ruin it would be scorching. Once you scorch the grains when you're cooking those grains, and you scorch it real badly, that's one of the only things that you can do that's gonna impact it to where you just can't do much about it. Because redistilling, even putting it on bubble plates is just, it's hard to get that scorched out if you scorched it pretty good. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. I thought you had a keg still, but I think, all right, I'm confused. You're somebody. I'll have to figure out who that is. Somebody. Okay. All right. Maybe another guy named Steve that's posting in the groups. I have to look back and see. Yeah, they were 3 pots fine. Once you get her dialed in and get a few changes made on it, they work just fine. Yeah, you can pick you up one pretty cheap. Look on Marketplace. Usually find some. I'd go with an element if you can. You know, those seem to be work pretty well. The plate might be a little tough on a keg, you know, if it didn't sit just right on there. But for, you know, for your Bever, you know, the heating plate's fine. But for a keg still, yeah, propane or an element probably going to work out best for you. All right. Got the ratio of water to cracked corn to make enough mash for a 5-gallon run. So you want about 2.5 to 3 pounds per gallon of water, right? In this case, you're probably going to want 6 or 7 gallons of water. So you're going to need, if you, for example, let's just say 7. That way you'll have plenty, you know, 5-gallon run. Now, first, is this a 5-gallon still that needs maybe 3.5 gallons to run? Or is it like a 7 or 8-gallon still that you can run 5 in? That's the first thing we have to determine is how many gallons of liquid you're actually going to be putting in the still. So once that's established, and you know it's 5, for example, 5, you know, we'll go with that. You're going to want to start with about 7 gallons of water. A lot of it's going to get absorbed. Some of it will evaporate. Um, so a lot of it gets absorbed into the you know, the fruits or vegetables or whatever that we're using. In this case, the corn. So you want to start with about 2.5 to 3 pounds. So if we start with 7 gallons of water, that's going to be about 20, you know, 20-ish pounds, 21 if it's, you know, um, 3 pounds. So let's see, 7 times 2.5, it's going to be 17.5. So anywhere between 18 and 21 gallons or pounds of corn would be fine. And then just cook that, gelatinize it. You got the high temp alpha to add, or wait till it gets down and, you know, add your powdered alpha, and then add your glucose when it cools. Hope that got your question answered. But yeah, 2.5 to 3. Um, I generally do, if it's just corn, I do 3. And I know it gets really thick and hard to work with, but you get a decent gravity. If I'm doing, if I'm adding a lot of gluten grains that get gooey, like rye, wheat, barley, and oats, you know, I'll probably cut it back to 2.5 pounds of grain per gallon. But anywhere between 2.5 to 3 pounds should be fine. You'll get a decent flavor and you'll get a decent amount of alcohol out of it. It's just getting a good conversion. It's a 13-gallon Bever. Well, hell, brother, do 10-gallon. Do, you know, hell, do bigger. Go bigger. Because, and especially because you can do a 50-pound bag of corn. You know, 50, let's see, 50 divided by 3 is about 16.66. And after you consider how much moisture is going to be absorbed into that you're not going to be squeezing out versus, you know, you're always going to have a little bit in the bottom. So, you know, you can do almost, you know, the whole bag of corn. And that 17, 18 gallons of water, you know, I guess 20 gallons would be 2.5. If you wanted to, you could do 2.5 and do 20 gallons of water and a whole 50-pound bag of corn. And it's good to have that little bit left over. You can use it as in your thumper if you want to, or if you do sour mashing, you can add it to your sour mash to help keep things going, you know. And put a little back set, water and sugar in there, a little bit of fruit, fresh grain to keep it going. Is it? I don't know how many on YouTube we get. I don't see the numbers. I'm not I don't focus on it. I don't even monitoring YouTube. I see the comments coming in from all the different places. So if somebody comments from Kick or Twitch or YouTube or Facebook, on my stream yard, it'll always show up here in comments, but I don't ever get to see the numbers. All right, Steve, have fun, brother. Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in, man. So how many we at on there, brother? Citronella, that's a new one on me, Jeffrey. I like it. So what all do you mix to make citronella candle? I know citronella, but what exactly is citronella? Is that something that you can distill and make your own? I know it's used to help keep bugs away, but is this some kind of elixir that's used with citrus or derived from some kind of citrus? Yeah, I think it was. I think he's been posting. I thought that was you. All right, J Dub. So 13-gallon bever. So that means you can run about 10, right? So if you start with like 20 and use a 50-pound, 20 gallons of water and a 50, you can break that into two runs, and have two decent, 9-gallon runs, and leave you plenty of head space there so you don't foam up and puke over. But it's good to leave you a little bit of space. So if it says 13 and it's 13 to the brim, you can't do 13. You can only do, a few gallons shy of that, right? So you don't want it. You got to leave yourself some space because you can't even boil water without it foaming up, and you don't want to get a lot of that stuff puking over on you. So that's cool. Yeah, I think we got about 22 on Facebook, on one channel on Facebook. But a lot of people, viewership on these on Facebook, I'll get on an average day, I'll get between 600 viewers, up to 1,000, and then views probably, because some people watch it more than once. So viewers 500 to 1,000, generally average 800. But views, seeing how some people watch it more than once or twice, getting the thousands, a couple thousand sometimes. So we're getting pretty good viewership, and getting, a lot of people don't talk or chime in. Most people don't watch it live. Most people watch it later in the week, or I guess, or listen to it on their way to work or something like that. So most of the viewers will probably, at the end of the night, it'll be like 100 or two. A lot of people tune in, and some people won't watch very long. Some people watch it for a few minutes and say, "Oh, this is crazy. That's not something for me," and they'll move on. And then a lot of times people will come back and check it out later, and come back every week. A lot of times they don't say anything. A lot of people are scared to. A lot of people want to learn, and that's fine. Have to get in here and join in. I understand. I've watched a lot of groups before I ever chimed in my first peep, and I was very tentative then. And now I'm becoming more relaxed, and I don't have a big still running anymore. Or anything like that, so I don't have as much to worry about. But I figure they got a hell of a lot more stuff to worry about in the world the way it is right now than little old me and my little steel. But I just on here trying to educate people and help them. There's a lot of states where it's legal, and we want to help everybody, make it safely and make it an enjoyable hobby, and it's a pretty good little hobby. I enjoy it. I know a lot of you all do too. Yeah, yeah. Most people will sit there. We call it lurking. I've lurked I lurked for a lot of years before I ever got involved. I started, I started before the internet. So as soon as the internet came out, of course, I'm checking this shit out on the internet, and there's all these groups. See, we had news groups back in the day, and I got in the news groups, and was a little bit active in those. I'd ask questions and help out and comment. And then let's see, what was that? Some community, not the news board. There was news groups, and then there was the boards. That I think those came first, the boards, and then the news groups, message boards, and then the news groups. But then it was communities. I guess there was little communities that formed, and there were lots of different topics of different communities, and I was involved in a lot of that. But I did a lot of lurking back then. I did a lot more reading and listening than I really commented. Yep, I'm the real Santa Claus, man. Yeah, I went to Old Fort this past year, and we handed out toys to tots. We do a lot of um, work benefits for charities and stuff. And Old Fort got flooded last year, of course, through Hurricane Helen, I think they called it, and that town was wiped out. So we did a lot of fundraising. We took, I don't know how many tents and propane, what you call them, ovens, whatever, the little propane stoves for people to cook on and stuff, because there's so many homeless. And then we went there for Christmas and then handed out toys for all the kids and stuff. And there was a lot of people still using the tents and stuff that we'd sent 2 or 3 months prior, and they were still living in those tents. And here it was December, cold as hell, man. It broke our heart. But yeah, we do a lot of work, a lot of stuff for that. The wart. Oh, he's got us a beer maker here that may be from Europe, I'm guessing. Might be wrong about the Europe part, but definitely a beer maker. Black Pearl Molasses. That sounds pretty good, brother. Did you use some of that Tarani? I think it is. They've got it at Target real cheap. If you have a Target in your town, go check them out, because they've got that Tarani um, salted caramel and some of those Tarani flavorings. And that's awesome, Trey. Yeah, they call it wort. I know they're a beer maker when they start talking wort and sparging and doing a lot of these protein rests and stuff like that. I know I'm talking to a beer maker, because they don't care about that as much in distilling grains. Well, I'm glad you have, Trey. We'll may have to ask you some questions sometimes. See, I made a lot of beer as far as from distilling, but I never was a big beer drinker. I always liked, whiskey. That was my weakness, is whiskey. So I drank a lot of Boilermakers, but I did drink a lot of beer growing up. I didn't always want to get hammered, get drunk. I just wanted to socialize. So, I drink beer with my buddies, but my weakness has always been whiskey. Is it Monin? Yeah, I think Tarani is. I'm gonna have to go look here and see. Pretty sure. Yeah, I think Target has the Tarani. Monin's good too, but the that Tarani stuff is pretty cheap. And it's comparable to the Monin. They're a lot alike. I mean, they're a lot alike. Yeah, I found out that I like. I didn't like beer until I went to France, and then when I was over there, they were serving hot dark beer, and that was pretty tasty. Some of that really stout dark beer is high proof. And, had a lot of flavor in it. I could appreciate that. I mean, I didn't love it, but I could appreciate it for what it was, and liked it a little better than just like a blonde American beer that's 3% and watery and just not a lot of flavor and kind of spicy. But the dark beers, yeah, I kind of got into those. They were pretty cool. Yeah, the Tarani salted caramel is good. I get that. The vanilla and several other flavors. And I always get some grenadine, and I always keep a bit of that stuff at the bar. Great for mixing. Great for mixing drinks. Yeah, that works well. And the snow cone syrup. The snow cone syrup is good stuff too. Awesome. Yeah, I've got a couple of 15 barrels I'm going to try to fill up. I gotta swell them up, put them in some water and swell them up, and then I gotta get 15 gallons of liquor to put in there. Do they? I'm not tried any of the Walmart syrups, but I do know that those snow cone syrups are pretty good to use in the infusers. Barley wines, that's something I've never tried. I've never tried a barley wine. Meads I've done indeed. Oh, the hillbilly chiller. What's going on, Kentucky Grizz? The hillbilly chiller. They do work. They work just fine, brother. Absolutely, they work just fine. Yeah, I do. And I actually in the DIY channel, I think we may have some. I'm not sure if there's something in the files about that. I do know in the past people have posted on that. I don't know how long back. You'd have to scroll back, but I'll look for some old posts on that and try to post something fresh in the DIY page for you. Got to be real careful about bending it over and crimping the when you bend that coil over to put submerge. But yeah, they make good chillers if you can get it being over and it's not. Of course, it has to work right now. You can't just take an air conditioner, not that get real cold and do it, and it's not gonna work. But yeah, they do pretty good job. Mona makes. Do they make clear watermelon concentrate? Yeah, I know some people be using that damn competitions. They'll cheat every damn time, man. There'll always be somebody puts that stuff out and says, "It's my brandy. It's what came off the tap." You taste it like drinking watermelon lemonade. It's like, man, I know it didn't come off your tap like this. It's sweet. It's watermelon. Oh yeah, I have a special secret. Yeah, I bet you do. Yep, the raspberry panty dropper. There you go. We called it hunch punch. We'd get moonshine and jugs of Hawaiian punch and different Kool-Aid flavorings and all this stuff, and we just mix them all up. Everybody bring, a bottle of whatever. Sometimes Everclear, sometimes vodka, sometimes Shine went in it. Everybody contribute a little something, and then we mix. Hawaiian punch and Kool-Aid and whatever in that, mix it all up and called it hunch punch. We'd all just get drunk and screw. Have fun when I was younger. So the window unit, you wasn't able to get it to work for you? The only thing that goes wrong in most is when you get that trying to bend it over to go into the liquid. A lot of times it's good to, like, I've seen people cut a section of their cooler lid off to drop that coil in. I've seen people just, make wood mounts next to, bats, whatever, but not crimping that coil so you can, get that compressed gas, freon or whatever to circulate through there. It should work for you pretty well. So unless you cramp it or something must have gone wrong. Maybe a wire. Oh hell! Maybe a wire got crossed or something. Maybe some gas got out somehow and you lost some of your gas and you're not having enough freon in it to get cold anymore. I don't know. It might have a little place in there where you can add some more. But they do work. They work fine. I've seen quite a few people do it. I've always said I'm going to do it, but I never gotten around to doing it yet. But maybe that'll be a good little video to make and do one. I've got a couple of air conditioners that'd be perfect for it. They've been sitting in there for 2 or 3 years now. I haven't used them. Then my fiance brought them. She had them at home. She had them in Florida. I guess they just supplemented the rooms with it because it got so damn hot down there. They didn't want to keep the whole. They got a pretty good size house. They big tall ceilings. They didn't want to keep the whole house at 70 something. So in a couple of the bedrooms, they put little window units in there to help keep things cool. And they're small ones, but the small ones just perfect for it. Hey man, love your tongue. What's your favorite type of squirrel? I know this is a trick question, so I'm almost afraid to answer it. So I don't know if you're talking about gray squirrels or flying squirrels or red squirrels. My favorite to eat. I'm at a loss. But I hope it's a good joke that you will tell me. I used to do a little squirrel hunting. I'll tell you I'm not real fond of squirrel meat. What's your all's favorite? I'm not real fond of squirrel meat. It's kind of earthy and greasy. I mean, it would be probably one of the first animals I'd eat though if I, had to struggle to survive that and deer meat. Man, I'd eat that shit up. But it's just my aunt was known for squirrel gravy. So I went out and killed a few squirrels. I don't remember if they was red or grays, but took them to her, cleaned them up, took them to her, and she made me some squirrel gravy, and it was good. It was, it was decent. I would prefer a sausage. What's going on, James? I definitely would prefer a sausage to it, but it wasn't bad. It's something that if I was starving, I'd burn that shit up. But are they? Well, if I was hungry, I'd burn it up. It wasn't something I hated. It's kind of like salmon. It's not my favorite fish. It's kind of fishy-ish tasting and got some squirrel kind of. It's kind of a I don't know what the word, kind of, we'd call it earthy, grungy kind of taste. Oily. It's an oily. Um, it's not bad. It's just it's not my favorite. I would prefer sausage in my gravy, and I'm sure I'd prefer chicken or frog legs to it just eating it straight along. But if you mixed it like in a stew, and it was just meat in a stew that had a lot of other flavors that were in there, it's not as bad. Gamey, yeah, that's a good gamey. Yeah, that's a good word. Kind of a gamey taste to it. What you'd expect it to taste like. It's kind of oily, gamey, um, but it's not bad. It just alone not so great. In the gravy, it was okay. It's kind of like the giblets in there. Like a giblet gravy. There's like little chunks of liver in it. Little different tasting, but altogether okay. That's kind of what it did for my gravy. Um, but it's not bad. I mean, if I was hungry, I'd eat them up. I mean, I'd eat them like hot dog. But it you know, but it's not going to be my go-to thing. I'm sure I'd prefer like deer meat and elk for sure. I guess kind of like bear. Gets a little gamey and oily and stringy. You know, but yeah, I've had some squirrel meat in my days. Done quite a bit of squirrel hunting. Usually when we went squirrel hunting, we were looking for weed. We were looking for weed growing, and yeah. What's going on, G. Liz? See, I mentioned weed. There he is. Hot shot up. What's going on, Liz? Is that the way y'all do it? Now I know that there's a lot of gamey stuff they do that way, and some people do deer meat that way as well. And I know like some fish, like stripers, striped bass. They're good brined like that as well. Kind of got somebody to say carp or something too. Been doing good, brother. So how's the job coming along? Liz is one of those we were talking about earlier, that I was talking about earlier, that is now working in the industry, that came in and learned a lot in a quick time, and now he's taking what he's learned and made made a job out of it. So that's awesome. And that's another reason it should be legal. We were talking about that earlier, Liz. I didn't mention you by name, but I was thinking about you. Yeah, but squirrels are pretty good, and definitely something that's an acquired taste. I mean, I'd say this that sounds sick. Most girls probably wouldn't like it. It'd be gross to them because if you told them it's squirrel, but you know, I don't know. That's probably kind of sexist, but I know how my fiance is. She wouldn't like it because of that. She's kind of funny about that stuff. So how's the job coming along, brother? I ain't heard yet. Awesome. What's going on, MG? I'm Philbilly's buddy Joe. I'm Bad Santa, but we run this on Philbilly's channel. We're all brothers in the militia, but we're doing good, brother. Thanks for stopping in. And yeah, if this was Philbilly, he would be looking pretty good, but I don't know if he can get this good looking though, man. He got a long way to go. Yeah, rabbit is good. Yeah, rabbit's a bit, yeah, it's not as gamey. 250, man, that's awesome. So how many bubble plates in that thing? I didn't even get finished this Christopher building mini steel, maybe. run like 20 liters. It's what, 5 gallons ish? No, that's 2 liters. I think that. How much is 20 liters? Let me do my little conversion here. 20 liters. 5 gallons. Okay, I was right. Yeah, 4 liters, close to 4 liters per gallon. So about 5 gallons. I'd say, Christopher, I'd say take it on up to 10, brother. And I say that for several reasons, but first and foremost, it's not a lot of additional time to distill that much more. In fact, you'd be surprised at how little extra time it would take to do that extra bit, especially if you have a larger column coming off of it. So if you had like a 5 gallon with a 3/4 inch versus a 10 gallon with an inch and a half, you're going to pretty much come off and do the same speed. Um, so you'll have about the same run time. So, but making the mash, if you can, the more you can do up to a certain point, of course, when it just gets so huge that you can't even carry the water and all that. But um, the more you can do, the more time benefit it is, because it's about the same amount of work grinding the corn. So you just grind a little bit more, so it's not that much trouble because you already got the grinder out. You already got the bag there. It's just going to be 5 or 10 more minutes, tilting the bag and grinding twice as much. And you'll have the water there. So it's going to take maybe 15, 30 minutes longer for that much more to boil. But aside from that, that's the only amount of time more that's going to take to do than to pull all that equipment out twice, pull that bag of corn out twice, get that grinder out, the extension cord running, and all this, and get your pot out, get your, propane tank out, get everything out to do. It just takes so much more time. It doesn't have to be copper, brother. It doesn't have to be copper. You can use stainless steel. Works just fine. Vever, you don't have, I'm all for building copper. If you got the time and money, you can get sheet copper and build it. And we've got, actually, in the militia, I've got some, and in the DIY channel, in the files, we've got, let me see here. I'm getting lots of messages here. Let's see. Let me see if I can send those last links out. Close those. Yeah, that. Let me send these out real quick so people can watch this later on tonight at their leisure on these other channels that I like to get on to. It doesn't let me get on to send the link to all of them. Okay, let me see if I can find that real quickly here. Hold on just a second. Let me present. Let me see where I've got that. I know it might be in a PDF. Let me find that file before I try to share it. Just a second. I know I've got it in the, I'll probably find it actually quicker in the militia. Let me go to the militia group file section. I put it in there not too long ago. It's been a little bit ago. Maybe it's, yeah, okay. Let me look in the DIY files here just a second. It'll definitely, what is that? Oh, somebody's firework. April sent me a message. All right, let's see. Let's see. There's K builds. Here we go. Yeah, it is PDF. Let me grab. this real quick and I'll save it. Where is that in my? That's in downloads. Okay. Okay, I can. All right, let me present PDF. Okay, downloads. Yep, let's see. Let's see. Here we go. Processing. Okay. So, got a little plans to make a 12-gallon with a 36 by 56 sheet. So if you could get sheet, you can follow this, and it's got templates. It gives you warnings and all this, and it's going to make you a Kentucky steel, basically similar to this one, right? You're not going to have to do any hammering or turning or English wheels or anything like that. Pretty much using, I guess these are called frustrums. This in geometry is called a frustrum. That's a frustrum. That's a frustrum, or frustum maybe. And it's just basically a cone. That's called the shape. But this will have your dimensions and stuff that you can cut it out and calculations. So it's pretty handy. And this will be pretty much, yeah, here it talks about frustums. Bottom frustum, top frustum, and this is a cap frustum. Yeah, all frustums. I'm surprised it mentioned that. That's a geometry term. But yeah, it has all your stuff in here. If you want to, if you're in, let me send you the name of the group. Join. Make sure that you answer the questions. We have to have questions there to let me copy. We have to ask questions to get rid of the bots. So there's the name of the Facebook group, DIY Shining Stuff. And I'm an admin in there. Me and Eric Ayers put that group. Eric actually created the group, and he and I got it going years ago. He's not as active now, but I try to keep it going. We got a pretty good group of people in there that answer questions and stuff, and I'll jump in there and answer if nobody else has, or if there's a wrong answer or one that's kind of incomplete. But yeah, it's in the group's DIY Shining Stuff. Christopher, I'll look for your name. If you are you already in there? If so, you're good to go. But if not, it's in the file section. You know, it is towards the top of the files. At the very top of the page, you'll see where it says. Let me go back here. Discussion, featured members, media, files. So just click on files and scroll down, and it's probably the fifth or two, four, six one down. Copper pot steel design plan, 12-gallon template, and a 12-gallon is a pretty decent size. I mean, it's something that you can put on your stovetop still, right? You can put it on a smooth top. I've run an 18.5-gallon bever, in the wintertime on my stove. It's an old glass top stove. It doesn't use induction. It's got the infrared heating, but it's not induction. It actually gets hot, but it doesn't cycle. So that's the big issue about using a lot of the electric stove is you don't want one that cycles on and off when it's on high. But yeah, join the group. A lot of good info in there in the files. And if you have any questions to ask, jump in and we'll get somebody to answer for you. But yeah, it'd make you a nice little 12-gallon still. And if you want, instead of using the paste type, let me open this back up again. And instead of using the type that you paste here, where this collar is, if you want to, you can make this collar pretty much any size you want. Let's see if I can see the dimensions here. Well, let me get this up here so I can see it first. Let's see, this radius is hard for me to tell how many inches. But if you want to make it to where it's 4-inch, comes up to a 4-inch, you can get a ferrule, a sanitary ferrule, and put that on the top of the steel right here on your cap, or on the bottom of your cap, and on the top of your top frustrum. You can put that 4-inch sanitary, so you can make this frustrum come up to a 4-inch here instead of whatever this dimension is here, on your top frustrum. So you can make this a 4-inch for a 4-inch ferrule, and solder that in. That way you don't have to mud. I've mudded before, and it's a pain in the ass every time. You have to put your biscuit dough in there, and every time you're done, you have to chisel it off, clean it off, and get it wet, and scrub it, and take a 3M pad to it, and it's a pain in the ass. It's tough. Well, welcome to the group, brother. Glad to have you here. If you got any questions, that's what we're here for. We're to help people learn how to make some shine. 6 plates, that's awesome. What's going on, Hillbilly? I saw you on there last night, man. I got out of there just in time, didn't I? Before all the drama hit. But the thing about it is a lot of, like the copper and stuff, and copper's been traditionally good because it's malleable, it's easily cut, it's easily shaped, it's easily soldered. So we don't have to break out welders like you do with stainless or anything like that. So, and it makes good liquor because it transfers heat very well, and it helps remove the sulfides. That's one of the biggest benefits. Downfall is it's difficult to maintain and clean. Because you get that patina on there and all the green oxidation and stuff on there that you have to deal with and you don't want in your liquor. So aside from maintenance, it's great, but a lot of people are moving to stainless for the boilers, and then they use copper in the vapor path and use copper mesh to help take out the sulfites. So that works too. That works pretty well too. And it's a lot easier to maintain that stainless and clean. I missed all that. Dark, if you can just search the DIY shining stuff, it should. I can't post the link on here because it sends it out to all over the world. So, yeah, if you just type DIY shining stuff in Facebook, it'll definitely take you, and just hit join button and answer the questions. So I don't think you're a bot. Anytime, brother. That's what we're here for. Yeah, it makes a good little steel. Yeah, it's the template you need. Now, I will recommend that you take that template and put it on some poster board, on some paper, some of that thick paper, cardboard, thick cardboard or something like that, and make a template using that, and then use that for tracing and stuff. That way you can kind of put it all together with tape, like painting tape or something, and make sure everything's going to fit together and look all right. And then you can take it all apart and use it as a template for marking out your copper, because you definitely don't want to have any waste. But yeah, a piece of 36 by 50, that's about 3 by 5. Yeah, 5 is 60. So that's about 36 by 60. So yeah, 3 by 5 here would be about 150, 140 on an average deal. Because I think a full sheet 3 by 10 is like 270 to 300. So I'd say you get half of that for easy, 150, 160. Yeah. Yeah, I've not seen that, Scott, but that's yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of different patterns out there on the internet and templates. And if you had like an overhead projector where you could, project it and, enlarge it or reduce it to make larger or smaller steels, it would all scale up and down pretty well together, if you wanted to scale it up and down. But I like the shape of the frustums. Definitely like the shape of these two frustums here instead of just the straight wall coming up and then, you know, and then doing your cap. This is the cape. This is called the cape here. What we call the cape and this cap here. But the cape frustum is always this way, but a lot of times this bottom frustum is just a straight barrel instead of angled. This is kind of an old timey design. Pretty cool though. I like it. It's novel. A lot of people don't. A lot of the steel builders these days they just do straight up because it's easy and quick, and people accept it that way. So why go to the extra trouble? That's awesome. So go check out Phil Billy and on philbilly.com, and lots of videos on there about how to's and building. And Phil Billy's one of the few people that'll sit there and build steels and sell them, but at the same time teach you how to do it yourself. He's not. It's not all about the money to him. It's about helping and of course business. Now, brother, I'm a lone wolf on here. Every once in a while, I'll have a guest come on, but um, it'd be somebody in the industry or somebody that's you know yeah. Come on Saturdays, log in or I'm sorry, on Fridays, and on the shit show, and you can definitely join on the shit show, man. We'll bring you on there, and you can say whatever you got to say, unless it's something real bad, and then we'll shit can you real quick. but yeah, it's a different format on Friday, brother. But on here, this is more of question answer. Teaching people how to distill and how to mash and how to build your steel and all that fun stuff. And so, if you've been in the industry for a long time, you got a lot of experience. Hop on the groups and get to know us. And if you're if you're a master at it, we'll bring you on here. And I'm bringing Alan Bishop on Wednesday. And if I can bring, if you're that caliber, I'd be happy to bring you on, brother. All right, well, let's get a little slow here. I'm still recovering. I got a fiance that's about to go to bed. Yeah, man, I appreciate you. Get on here and on Friday, jump on Friday, and we give everybody a platform. You can jump on and say whatever you want. Um, just can't be hate speech or something that's going to get us banned off Facebook or or YouTube. But hell, we don't care, as long as it's not a bannable thing. But if it is, we'd have to, end it real quick. But yeah, on here it's more of an education thing. It's not just But we do have quite a few all week long. We got people doing different things. I think um, Phil and Roy, they get a lot of people. They bring a lot of people on. but it's not like the shit show. It's you know, more focused. Yeah, join the militia on Facebook, Moonshine Militia, and on Fridays you're welcome, James. You jump right on in there too. Uh, Join the Moonshine Militia on Facebook, and on Fridays when we have the shit show. Um, well, ask your questions. That's what we're here for, brother. Type it in there. Awesome, Dark. Well, awesome. Welcome to the 2 new members. Good to have you with us. Now you can check that file section out and see. We got quite a few files in there, but I'm adding all the time. I gotta go through them all. I've got shitloads of files to add, but I gotta go through them all and make sure that it's good information and that it's not copyrighted, and that I'm gonna get my ass sued off for sharing them. Well, we sure enjoy it, Tommy. Jump on in there and yeah, Saturdays and Wednesdays are the Q&A days. Thursday is ladies days, and the ladies get on here and man, they talk about everything. You know, it's not just gossip. They've got some pretty sharp ladies, you know. So, but the topics on there can go anywhere. I know Lisa and Mark on Mondays do a talk about tinctures and herbs and herbal remedies and things like that, and that's pretty entertaining and interesting and something everybody needs to know, especially the medicinal herbs and stuff. If we end up having to go off the grid and live or something, you know, it's all good information to know. But yeah, on Saturdays and Wednesdays, I do a Q&A, you know, and anybody can come in with any questions they have or issues they're having with their mash, and we can figure out what's going on. And so you're wanting a good recipe, brother. We can lay the recipes on you. Now, I will show you this chart, and if you just join the DIY page or the militia, if you look in the file section, you will see something that says Mash Bills 2.0.2, and I will share that with you in just a second here. It's easier for me to just go in here and re-download it and put it in uh, my recent downloads than it is for me to suffer through looking all over my computer to find it. So just a second, I'll have it up in just a minute. And that should be my downloads here. Here we go. I've got it there 6 times now. All right. Yeah, jump on Friday, man. It's a lot of fun. You know, don't go by what happened last night, because that's crazy. That gets crazy. But like right here, James, I hope you can see it. If you can you can do screenshots if you don't want to join the groups and pull them down. Hey, Lisa. Awesome. Let me see here. Yeah, I think we got everybody. All right. Crew chat. Okay. All right. I'm not sure if you can see this or not, James, but inside here it gives you pretty much the mash bill for most of the top um, There's like 3 pages here of them for different distilleries. It'll give you most of the mash bills for most of the bourbons that you like. And this is just ratios. So what we know to do is we take these ratios and we use that same ratio, and we'll add 2.5 to 3 pounds of that ratio to every gallon of water that we mash. Okay, so that's a quick and easy recipe to use. Now, as far as conversions and Weller, yeah, I do too. Weller's good stuff. Um, so I like a lot of wheated bourbons. That's why I have a lot of red wheat and malt red wheat. Um, but once you figure out what you do, which of these ratios that you want, then we can work with you and teach you how to gelatinize each grain. Doing a step mashing process where you can use each of the grains and convert and get the sugars out of the grains using different amylase and enzymes to securify, to get the sugars out of the starch and convert them into simple sugars that, your yeast can eat. Yeah, we've got some, we were just talking about earlier, they've got some barrels you can buy. They've got jars with wood lids, or you can use, I like using just the wood staves off the barrels. You can do that. Uh, sand them down the outside where it's gotten a lot of gray. Awesome. If you used to brew beer, you're way ahead of the game, brother. So you already know how to use amylase and gelatinize and do a lot of these things. The main difference is we won't be using hops. That's about the biggest difference. And we don't have to worry about protein rest, and because we're not really worried about the protein haze and the appearance, because we're going to distill it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Which it makes actually making a mash is a lot easier than a beer. Just like making a brandy is a lot easier than making a wine, because to make a wine or a beer, your mash has to be good enough to drink. I would say that most of the people that are just beginning and doing this aren't at that level yet, right? So, but once you're at the level where you make a mash good enough to drink, yeah, you're gonna, if you distill it properly, you're gonna make a damn good, drink. Now, aging it, those barrels, the smaller barrel, the less time you have to age it. You got more surface, right, area to liquid ratio, and you can decrease the time, but the quality is not the same. That's not for yourself. You're not going to get the same quality out of putting, your liquor in a 1 gallon barrel for 2 weeks or 3 weeks that you'll get in a 53 gallon for 3 years, right? So it's just not going to be the same. Time has a lot to do with that. And tannins, a lot of times it's just a lot of tannins, but you can take barrel staves, the actual barrels that's been used, and cut sections out. I sand the gray barrel part on the outside. I'll take a propane torch and I'll char all 4 sides of it real well and put that in a jar, and it'll age fairly well. It's not the same, but it gives it some smoke, some char, and it makes a whiskey out of your white dog. It's, if I like the smoky. So, I love whiskey and bourbon. Love the smoky. White dog's okay. Corn liquor's okay, but it's that much better once it's aged in a barrel or has that smokiness to it. Hard to replace a barrel though. You're not going to replace a 53 gallon barrel for 4 to 10 years, whatever. It just keeps getting better up to a point. Then it over oaks. So some of this stuff that's 20-year-old barrel, maybe for some, but for a lot of people that's just too much wood. It's a lot of over oaking. So I think there's a point in time when it's prime, but I think sometimes we can get past that. Again, Chris, that's a good. It really depends on the barrel and the barrel size. So like a gallon barrel, you have to check that shit weekly because it can it can over oak really quickly. 2 gallon, a little less. I've got a couple of 15s I'm going to work with. I think 15 is a good size. It's something that you grunt and lift if you had to, but anything bigger than that, it's going to be tough to carry. 15 is going to be close to 100 pounds. Uh, so anything beyond that, unless big muscle man, I don't see anybody carrying around 53-gallon barrels full of. But you can't replace the time in a big barrel. It's been tried. Everybody's tried many ways of trying to optimize that, but it's really tough. But it's good. They're good. It's acceptable unless you're like a really big bourbon snob and have a really sensitive palate, which I don't. I burnt my taste buds out a long time ago with high proof. But um, you're not going to be as particular and picky. 5 gallons, awesome. The biggest thing about beer is if it has hops and the oils from the hops in it, those don't tend to make a good distillate, and it's a little extra cleaning inside your still. Getting that smell and that skunkiness out. Um, a lot of people, they hate it. A lot of people have distilled it and they say it's not bad, and that's some people eat chicken livers too. I don't know what's wrong with them. But it's not for everybody. Yeah, actually, bourbon, is basically just, it's a good multi-grain shine. We're a corn liquor basically has to be at least 51% corn, right? In a new barrel though, so we're going to break that rule. We get a used barrel, so technically we have to call it a whiskey. Um, but yeah, we can make some of the some of the best stuff I've ever drank was something that came out of a 20-gallon steel. When we do it in smaller batches like this, you have a lot more control, a lot more um, ability to change things than these big companies do. They look for consistency. They do it the same exact way every time, and yeah, yeah, those hop oils are not good. But using that barrel, it'll help a white dog out. I mean, you can take an average white dog that tastes okay, it's not bad, and put it in a barrel and let it age, and it adds a lot to it. That good smoky charred, vanilla caramel flavor that you get out of a aging and out of the wood. It definitely helps. Yep, decarb. I understand. Yeah, yeah. I think we call that the green dragon. Yeah, it's great for extracting oils and stuff from all kinds of different herbs and plants. It's used for infusing. That's what they were talking about with Lisa and Mark and their um, podcast on infusing and a lot of tinctures and stuff. It's used to get a lot of these medicinal oils and stuff out of the plants. So it's there's a lot to having a little moonshine still or alcohol distilling system. If the times hit the fan, man, I mean, alcohol is not just for drinking. It's good for your cuts and scrapes. It's good for cleaning wounds. It's good for making tinctures to help make medicines and stuff. So it's kind of an essential thing to have. Yeah. Oh yeah, you can distill that Mad Dog. That's just making a brandy, brother. It's Mad Dog brandy, but it's still brandy. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a Mad Dog brandy. I like the name, Mad Dog brandy. That'd bring some old memories back. Well, now you, you might have to get you another one now, James. Damn it. Maybe they'll sell it back. Maybe they won't like the hobby. You never know. But it's always, worms are nothing. You can go to the store and buy a coil of copper. It's already pre-coiled, and just basically drill some wood out holes and thread this through several of them and make you a nice little worm. Put some fittings on each end and yeah, yeah, that's right. It sure is. I keep my tails. Yeah, I throw the heads and forest way, but I keep the tails and I'll either run them all together or I'll just throw them in the next one if it's not going to be something that's going to affect the flavor. So if they're a pretty neutral tail, I will. If it's like peach tails and I got a apple brandy coming out, I'm probably not going to do that. But I'll put a bunch of tails together and do a all tails run. Or I'll throw them in the thumper on the next one. If I'm doing like multiple runs and I keep the tails out and throw them in a thumper, on the third run or something like that. Yeah, Phil, he cares about everything, or if he doesn't care, he'll make it or get it for you. Great guy. You got a Liebig now? Liebigs are fine. As long as it gets cool enough water, and it's efficient. I prefer the shotgun to a Liebig, and of course, the best is the worm, the copper worm, the coil. So it's cheap to do. It's easy. You can buy it. Don't try to get straight stick copper and bend it and do all that craziness. Save yourself some trouble because it's cheaper to buy this soft copper in a coil, and you get 20, 30 feet, plenty of copper, to put in a bucket, spiral it, just put the grommet in the bottom, run it through, and put your fitting on the end and put your fitting on the top side, whatever thread or whatever pattern you're joining up with. Um, but yeah, the copper worms are probably the best. And then shotgun condensers is basically a Liebig with a bunch of little tubes inside instead of just one. So it's just a little bit more efficient, but they pretty much do the same thing. It's good. As long as copper, is a big plus, having copper. As long as it condenses it, that's the main thing. Getting a good condensation and temperature. A lot of people think you have to have ice cold water for it, and you don't. You just have to maintain the temperature of water that you do use. So 65 to 75 is just fine temperature wise. Yeah, the popcorn is something. Yeah, he made shotgun condensers. There's a lot of people that made them before popcorn ever did, but it's not hard. That, but just having that 4-inch copper, that you're gonna that 3-inch bigger copper, you almost have to take sheet and do it because buying the pipe that size is pretty expensive. So you can take sheet copper and roll it, form it, and then use that as your outside casing for your shotgun condenser. Lot cheaper than trying to buy that 4-inch pipe. That stuff's expensive. But I wouldn't try to do it with anything less than like a 2-inch, and then we're going to use like 3/8 tubes inside a 2-inch or a 3-inch. Would work fine as well. Yeah, they work great. The shotgun condenser is a little more efficient, and they work real well. That's why I use the shotgun. It saves a lot of time and trouble. I like the fact that it's enclosed. Like a worm you can only put as much fluid in as can drain out, right? So a lot of times they'll have a half-inch line feeding it and then a half-inch line draining it. Okay, well, you can't put any water in it at pressure because it's not going to drain out fast enough. It's going to overflow on the sides, right? So unless you got like a canister flake stand, you're going to have to, slow it down or have a bigger pipe as a drain is the smart thing to do. But I haven't seen very many of those that were made wisely. But with a canister and an enclosed like in a Liebig or a shotgun or a canister, condenser like that comes on the football stills, it's enclosed. So you can force water in and it'll shoot out the other side because, unless you overforce it. But what's going on, Mud Grips? I'm Bad Santa. I'm Phil Billy's brother from another mother. But yeah, we all get on here. Phil Billy's on usually on Friday nights, and we broadcast on his channel. He's the founder of the Moonshine Militia that we're all part of, and so we all get together and do our little podcast during the week. But yeah, we're all sanctioned by Phil Billy. So where you at? Mud Grips and Moonshine? Man, have to be somewhere in the South, I'm guessing. Maybe Georgia, or Alabama, or Tennessee, or Kentucky, somewhere close around these parts. Maybe Mississippi. Some other time, James, uh, we go backstage after the live, and I can send you, a link, and you can jump in if you want to show me something. But yeah, we can't do it live. I wouldn't want you to get in trouble no more than I want to get in any. Yeah, on Fridays they drop the links. Ohio. Okay, so you up in Fibonacci country. Yeah, that's where Philbilly's at. He's up in Ohio. Awesome place. There's a lot of shiners up here. But James, at the end, I'll send you a StreamYard link, and right before I go off, and you can join up backstage, and we won't be live, and I'll check it out then. Oh yeah, it's apple brandy. That's all it is. It's just apple brandy. Made a lot of apple pie. Made a lot of peach pie. It makes a watermelon crawl, I guess they call it. It's just brandy's made different fruits. Oh, the apple pie. A lot of people post flavor though. They do a little post flavoring on true apple pie, and on watermelon they do a little post flavoring on. But a true brandy we don't, and most of our competitions we don't do any post flavorings on. But generally, apple pie will have a decent apple brandy with some apple juice added to it afterwards, mixed with a little cinnamon to proof it down to 50, 60 proof, and that's what your typical apple pie will be, something like that. Yeah, James, I'll put the link up right at the end here in a little bit, and you can jump in that and I can end the stream, and you can show me backstage. That way, you don't. I know you don't want the world to see, and that's the only way we can hide it. Yeah, I agree. It's cheating. Yep, it's cheating. I don't, unless of course it's in the rules that you can do that, and which then it becomes more. Um, Yeah, yeah. So brandy technically can't be poached, but with the stuff that yeah, I'm tired, man. I fell asleep. I fell asleep on the shit show last night. On the first half hour of it, man, I was nodding off. I've been sick this past week and haven't been sleeping well, and I'm still a little bit tired. I did sleep last night though, from about 8:30 when I left the show till about 12:30, 1 o'clock this morning when I woke up, and haven't been able to get back to sleep. Now I'm getting tired again. I've been up since midnight, but yeah. But most of the contents we have is just straight, off the tap, no post. But we do have some because to me it's bartending. When it's post flavoring, it's a bartending competition. When it's what flavor do you get off the still, that's a distilling competition. So I don't try to confuse the two. And I have nothing against that. I used to bartend, so I can make a good mix drink, just the same, and I can sweeten it up and make it awesome. But that's a little bit different than distilling, and getting some kind of flavor. So, but yeah, we have competitions, and some people's code of conduct is if it's not cheating if you don't get caught. So they'll push it. But to me, I can't wouldn't dream of it. But it's a lot of fun. All right, Christopher, good seeing you, brother. Tune in next week. We'll be on Wednesday. I have my buddy Alan Bishop on here, probably one of the most knowledgeable people that we can get on here. There are probably people out there. I don't know who they are. Maybe one, but he runs a multi-million-dollar distillery and doesn't have time. But Alan's probably the most knowledgeable person on the subject that has time to take time to get down and talk to us. He runs a distillery. He's worked at several different distilleries, but now he's got a part ownership in this one, so he's got a little more creative abilities. And he's going to come in and talk and go over a little more of the more, I guess, difficult and more higher level distilling questions and stuff on Wednesday. Um, but he now runs Old Homestead Distillery in Indiana. He used to be at French Lick, had a distillery. I'm trying to think of the name of it. That shit, I can't remember what it was. But he used to work there at French Lick, and that might be the name of the distillery, French Lick. But I'm sure somebody here can correct me. But now he works for Old Homestead, which he's part owner in and has a lot more creative abilities to do some things. But very knowledgeable guy. So he'll be on here Wednesday. Saturday, I'm going to be in Ohio at Philbilly's having a big party. So, Mud Grips, get in the militia and figure out where that party is because you're going to want to be there. Blue Hybrid Mass. It's like some Ohio blue. Yeah, a lot of people like the Ohio blue or Jimmy Red with some white, have a little red, white, and blue corn going into it. That makes for a pretty good shine, and you can always, especially on Independence Day. Yeah, yeah. Most towns don't have a lot of Class 3 stuff. Class A and B, all Class C. I was thinking firework Class C. Yeah, kids like it. That's the most important thing. All right, Christopher. we'll see you, brother. Take care. We'll be here on Wednesday. Tune in then. And Mudflat, you need to get up in the militia and figure out. I'm trying to think of the name of the bar. Yeah, let me check it out real quick. Hopefully they post this often enough. Oh, wait a minute. We got 100 in. Well, shit. A lot of posts on here. Let's see. Did I make a. I'm going to have to pin that to the damn top of the group so I don't have to scroll down or anybody else have to scroll down to find it. But anyway, I'll know about Monday or Wednesday. I'll find out. So tune back in, or better yet, join the militia and ask a question there, and hopefully Phil Billy somebody can't remember the damn name of it, man. I've seen it 5 times, but it's there in Dayton. Yeah, those are those big Class B fireworks. Class C, I think, is a consumer firework, and the Class B are the good ones. You know, you can get them 10-inch mortars. We used to get those. Don't get caught with them though. I had a buddy. He got some time over it. But a friend of a friend. It wasn't my friend, but a friend of a friend. But the dude got time over it. But he was selling Class B fireworks. Man, they were a little funny about that. But yeah, it was big. I think we were shooting 8-inch shells, and it busted one of the damn tubes. And it blew half the fucking creek bank out. You know, we were setting down in the creek bank, you know, kind of below everything else, thinking it'd be safe and shit. And that mortar blew one of these tubes out, man, and it blew some of the creek bank out. I mean, those things ain't kidding, man. Those are some heavy duty shells, man. I was amazed. It's like a fucking stick of dynamite, bro. Fucking crazy. Yeah. Yeah, man. I've seen some big shells going off, you know, now 3 and 4-inch shells are pretty, you know, they're cool. But man, you get up in these 8, 10, 12-inch shells, man. I mean, you know, they're crazy, man. They're badass. What do you think? A bomb went off? Yeah, keep them locked and loaded, baby. That's the way they got to be. Not any good if they're not. Yeah, I'm definitely a pro 2A kind of guy. All right, well, I guess it's getting about that time. Let me see if I can grab this link here. All right. Let's see something here real quickly. All right. Okay, I'll post this link for you, James. Yep. Y'all, exactly. Y'all enjoy the rest of the Independence Day weekend. Spend some time with family. Be safe. Thanks for tuning in. There's a link for you, James. Hopefully that'll work. Let me know. Well, interesting. Okay, big go up to 7. Yeah, hit that link and I'll keep you backstage. I won't bring you up front. But everybody have a great weekend. And we will see you here Wednesday with Alan Bishop. So have some of your more difficult questions that we'll try to handle while we've got him on there. And we'll go over some more advanced topics and talk more about making cuts and finding. Somebody commented on jar 7 and 8 being the best and things like that. There are certain sections of the heads that have specific esters. Yeah, just hit that link, brother, and it'll bring you on here, and I'll keep you backstage. I won't. Did you just click that link and hit OK for all the questions it'll ask you, and I'll see you pop backstage. I won't add you to the stage, but I do need to remove some of these pop-ups I had on earlier. But there are certain places in the heads that have esters that are sweet, that have, okay, cool. Did you, the link that I just shared, did you click on that? Oh, wait a minute, wait. Yeah, I gave you, well, here, let me do this. Shit, I think I gave you the wrong link here. Now, try that link. That should work a little better. All right. Well, at least now you're on Facebook, so you can join the militia while you're on there. But yeah, that link will probably work a little better. The other link was just to the watch the stream. That was to the DIY or to Distilling 101 page that I run. All right, I got you, brother. All right, y'all. Have a great weekend. We'll see y'all back here on Wednesday. Until then, everybody have a good time. Be safe and shine on, y'all. Peace out.